to Stacy.
Thank you, Giovanna, and welcome to all of you who have decided to attend this webinar. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Entomological Society of America welcome you to this webinar to discuss the Public Health Entomology for All program and its internships and fellowships with the CDC. My name is Stacy East, and I'm Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with ESA. I will be the primary contact for applicants and then the administrative contact for those applicants who ultimately become interns and fellows. We're really excited about these opportunities, and we'll talk about the agenda next. So we have a packed agenda where we will introduce the remaining panelists and the CDC. We will discuss why the CDC is focused on vector-borne diseases, the application process for the internships and fellowships, and what you can expect once you are selected as an intern and fellow. And of course, we'll end with questions and answers. So today you will meet C. Ben Beard, Sue Visser, and Carolina Yara-Cespedes. Dr. Beard is CDC's Division Director, Division of Vector-borne Diseases. Dr. Beard has been crucial in shaping the experiences of FIFA interns and fellows. Dr. Visser is Associate Director for Policy and Extramural Programs, Division of Vector-borne Disease, and she is the FIFA Program Director. Dr. Visser oversees FIFA and makes sure it's productive from the CDC side. Carolina Yara-Cespedes is a graduate of Antillean University in Mayagüez, Puerto Rico. She's a member of the inaugural class of interns. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Dr. Beard so he can discuss vector-borne diseases and CDC.
Thanks, Stacy. And I do have to make one adjustment to your introduction. I am the deputy director, not the director. And one thing I learned a long time ago, and one thing important that I would say to all mentees is never present yourself as your boss. That's not a good idea. So no, actually, he wouldn't really care, but that is correct. I'm the deputy director. Thank you. And a longtime member of the Entomological Society and a great supporter of ESA. So DVBD, the Division of Vector-borne Diseases, we are part, as you would guess, of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. CDC is the nation's health protection agency. We work 24/7 to protect America from health, safety, and security threats, both domestically and abroad. And it doesn't matter where these diseases start at home or overseas, whether they're chronic or acute, curable or preventable, whether they're due to human error or to deliberate attack. So we have a very broad mission. Next slide. DVBD is actually in part of CDC's, one of our centers, the National Center for Emerging and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases, together with 6 other infectious disease centers. And collectively, we are responsible for the national public health response to a large number of disease threats. These include waterborne diseases, foodborne diseases, scary pathogens like Ebola virus, rabies, hospital infections, and antimicrobial resistance. Next slide. So that kind of begs the question, what is a vector? And we usually define this when we're talking to general audiences, since most of you are already at least interested in insects and insect-borne diseases, perhaps. Maybe the term vector is not as foreign as it would be to others, but By vector, what we mean is an organism, typically a biting insect or tick, that transmits a disease, germ, or pathogen, usually from an animal or plant or a human to another human. And so these germs can include viruses and bacteria and parasites. Next slide. So as I mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention, but our division, the Division of Vector-borne Diseases, is not actually in Atlanta, where the rest of CDC is, where CDC headquarters is located. We are administratively located in Fort Collins, Colorado. And we actually have 4 branches in the division. It's a pretty large division, over 400 staff total. 2 of our branches are in Fort Collins, the arboviral diseases branch that has responsibility for West Nile virus and Zika and yellow fever and other diseases like that. The bacterial diseases branch that's responsible for Lyme disease and plague and tularemia and other bacterial pathogens. And then we have 2 branches that are located off-site from us. One is at CDC headquarters in Atlanta, Rickettsia zoonosis branch, and the other is our dengue branch, which is located in San Juan, Puerto Rico. But as you see in the slide, we've got a really significant diversity in the types of staff that we have. We have entomologists and ecologists, which is my own sort of background originally. We have epidemiologists, we have microbiologists and immunologists, physicians, veterinarians, and virologists. So we have a really broad staff. Next slide. So it kind of begs the question, so what? You know, why are we concerned about vector-borne diseases? So vector-borne diseases actually are very concerning. We've had more cases today than we've ever had historically. We've had major outbreaks of diseases like Zika. We have the largest reported number of tick-borne diseases ever in the US that occurred in 2017. The numbers of reported cases have actually doubled in the last 15 or 20 years. And we actually had the largest local West Nile virus outbreak ever recorded anywhere in the world that occurred actually in the Phoenix, Arizona area just last summer. And so it was completely obscured by the COVID pandemic, but it was a huge event that occurred for us. There are more pathogens now than we've seen in any time in the past. And in fact, 10 vector-borne pathogens have been newly identified in the US just in the past 17 years. We had the first domestic outbreaks of both of chikungunya and of Zika viruses. And we've actually had discovery of 6 novel tick-borne pathogens just in the last few years. These include bourbon virus, which is a very concerning virus that's similar to a highly fatal virus that's seen in Asia. And then finally, more people are at risk now than ever before. And this is due to issues like commerce, which moves mosquitoes, ticks, and fleas, infected travelers who can be in Africa or Asia, and within 24 hours be in any city in the US or Canada or Europe. So these pathogens and diseases are being moved around quite actively. And mosquitoes and ticks are moving into new areas. And this is driven by a lot of change that we're seeing, changing land use patterns, climate change, other issues like that. Next slide. This just shows kind of a trend of what we've seen in reportable vector-borne diseases over the last 15 years. And the big blip that you see really was in 2016, and this was due to Zika. And the green bars are mosquito-borne diseases. The blue bars or turquoise are tick-borne diseases. So you can see we've had this steady, insidious increase in the numbers of tick-borne disease cases, whereas with the mosquito-borne diseases, it's really punctuated by big outbreaks that are occurring, you know, more and more these days. Next slide. So in our division, our vision is to create a future where vector-borne diseases no longer no longer threaten public health. And our mission is to reduce illness and death due to vector-borne diseases. We have 5 key goals. The first is to understand when, where, and how people are exposed to and get sick and die from vector-borne diseases. The second is to identify and detect vector-borne germs that cause disease in people. The third is to prevent exposure and to reduce the consequences of infection. The fourth is to support best practices for treatment of vector-borne diseases. And the fifth is to implement and support programs at state and local levels to detect, identify, control, and prevent vector-borne diseases. Next slide. And this is just a long list of all the pathogens that we deal with, or all the germs or agents, the bacteria, viruses, rickettsia that are carried by ticks and mosquitoes. And there's quite a long list. And these are just the highest priority ones. There actually are hundreds of other ones that are not on this list here, mostly arboviruses or viruses that are carried by mosquitoes. But I mentioned West Nile virus, mentioned our dengue branch in Puerto Rico. Lyme disease is a huge problem, and Rocky Mountain spotted fever is also a very big problem in the US. Next slide. So at this point, I think I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Sue Visser, who's going to talk about the FIFA program. Sue?
Thanks so much, Ben. Yes, I'm so happy to be here today to talk to you about the FIFA program with our colleagues at ESA. Ben and I have really loved developing this program from scratch. As Stacy mentioned, last year was our inaugural year, and we were really excited to expand upon this program that we developed because we know that a diverse workforce strengthens the field's ability to develop successful community accepted prevention and intervention efforts. And we also know that the field of entomology lacks diversity. As you can see on the right-hand side here, data from the National Science Foundation paints a pretty clear picture that just looking at entomology and parasitology grad students, about 2.3% of those students were Black in 2016, and 4.9% were Hispanic or Latinx. And we know that that dramatically underrepresents the US population of about 13.8% Black and 17.5% Hispanic or Latinx. And so we're seeing a really, really strong underrepresentation of just a diverse group of racial and ethnic students in the types of degree programs that feed our public health entomology field. And so in response to that, we started to sit down and develop a program that could help diversify this field. And so the Public Health Entomology for All program was born in collaboration with ESA, and Stacy East has played a huge role in conceptualizing and developing out this program. We developed strategies that expand the diversity of the workforce to help meet public health needs. And we consider diversity with a very, very broad definition of racial, cultural, demographic, and experiential diversity. We want to be very, very inclusive of many, many different types of diversity because we need them all in the field of public health entomology so that we are able to develop and design, and then execute public health interventions that work for our communities. So our plan is to do this through outreach, mentorship, training, service, and also promoting networks among current and future entomologists. So in developing this program, we developed a mission statement, and our mission statement is through internships and fellowships. FIFA encourages students and recent graduates to pursue public health entomology as a career and work toward a future in which all communities benefit from creative, inclusive, and equitable processes and public health solutions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy to just describe some of the internship and fellowships that we have developed and that we're expanding this year. Stacy.
Well, we have 3 different opportunities. The first opportunity, which we had last year, is for internships. The second opportunity, which we also had last year, was for 1-year fellowships. And we're expanding the number of 1-year fellowships and expanding to have 2-year fellowships, to offer 2-year fellowships. So later on, we're going to talk about what that means, but now we're going to talk about just how do you apply. So for the internships and fellowships, the dates are a little staggered. For the internships, the application period will open on December 15 of 2020. That application period will remain open through the middle of January. In order to apply, you need to be a student or graduate of an minority serving institution as defined by the United States Department of Education. Generally, those are Asian American Pacific Islander institutions, Hispanic serving institutions, predominantly Black institutions, historically Black colleges and universities, and tribal colleges and universities. There's a list which will be on the application that links to the United States Department of Education list of colleges. You have to have 3/4 of your college education completed. And so that means basically you are going to graduate generally in the December 2023 or May, June 24. You have to be in good academic standing. There is no GPA requirement. You will be asked to list your science courses, provide 2 recommendations, draft 2 essays, and successful initial applicants will be interviewed during March of 2023. And so I just want to say the reason why we're not asking for students to be entomology majors or even biology majors, that they be interested in science and good academic standing, because some people have a slower uptake in school, and we recognize that. So next slide. There will be 6 interns that are hired. 2 will work at the CDC in Atlanta, 2 will work at CDC in Fort Collins, and 2 will work at the CDC in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Later on, Dr. Visser will talk about the differences in those 3 locations. The internships are for 2 weeks. The pay is $18 an hour. 1 round trip ticket to your location. Will also meet for orientation in Fort Collins. You will pay for housing either at a local university or at some other place where we're able to find housing for you. You get an ESA membership, CDC and ESA mentorship, and along with that, you may be able to attend our annual meeting, which in 2023 will be in Maryland. Next slide. So for the 1-year fellows, we're going to actually open on December 15 and close January 31. So we're going to move up the fellowships to try to ensure that students who are deciding between graduate school or perhaps the fellowship can do that in a timely manner. You again have to be a student or graduate of a minority serving institution. You have to have a bachelor's degree. So successful 1-year fellowship applicants can have a bachelor's or a master's degree by the end of the spring 2023. Good academic standing and minimum GPA of 2.75. We will need a list of your science courses. Again, 2 recommendations, 2 essays. Interviews will be in March 23. And next slide, please. There will be 4 fellows, 2 who will be in Atlanta, 1 in Fort Collins, 1 in San Juan, Puerto Rico. The internships and the fellowships will begin late spring or early summer 2023. The 1-year fellowships will pay $28 an hour. You will get membership to ESA, mentorship with CDC and ESA, along with, again, the opportunities to attend our annual meeting. And lastly,
Stacy, sorry to interrupt. This is totally my mistake, but that should
two-year
be
fellows. Excuse me.
one Atlanta fellow, 2 Fort Collins 1-year fellows, and 1 San Juan. Sorry, that was my mistake.
I was wondering, but all right, perfect. So 1 in Atlanta, 2 in Fort Collins, 1 in San Juan.
That's correct. My apologies for that.
All right, and then the last opportunity are the 2-year research fellowships. Again, closing date is January 31. You have to be a student. We're going to prefer a student from or graduate of a minority serving institution. And by graduate, it can be community college, it can be undergraduate, it could be master's degree. It's not your terminal degree that is linked to the student or the graduation. You have to have a graduate degree, so a master's or a PhD. Good academic standing, minimum GPA of 2.75. We'll get a copy of your transcripts and know what classes you've taken. Recommendations, 2 essays. What's unique about the 2-year research fellowship program is that you have to apply to a specific branch. And when you get to the application, there will be a list of exactly what opportunities you will have when you apply to those. And essentially, the reason a 2-year fellow has to be able to basically do independent research and have a specific research question in mind that relates to vector-borne disease and public health and hopefully social justice. Next slide. So there will be 4 fellows. Do we have the breakdown correct? 2 in Atlanta? All right.
Nope.
No.
So 1 in Atlanta, 2 in Fort Collins, 1 in San Juan. Sorry about that.
All right. Perfect. Year 1 will begin in late spring or early summer, $37 an hour. Again, ESA membership, CDC, and ESA mentorship, and the opportunity to attend our annual meeting. All right, thank you. Next slide. And I forgot to introduce our interns. So on each of the prior slide was a picture of someone in a lab, and all of those pictures were of our interns and fellows that either worked during last summer, the summer that just passed, or the fellows who are working now. All right, and with that, I am going to, let's see, just one second. Talk about that. I just wanted to make sure this was my slide. I'm sorry. So the benefits of this program, FIFA, is you're matched with a subject matter expert, and you'll be working with that expert throughout either your internship or your fellowship, both 1 or 2 years. I would say that the matches and the work is professionally intimate. You are working with them quite a bit. The duration of the internship is 10 weeks. The fellowship is going to be either 1 or 2 years. You'll be exposed, no matter which level you apply for, to develop your core entomology skills of colony maintenance, vector collection methods, VBD, vector-borne disease research, taxonomy, vector biology, and control. There will be a number of opportunities to engage in professional skill building. We have an orientation where everyone will meet in Fort Collins before the internships and fellowships kick off. So you'll have an opportunity to build your networking community, not just with your mentor, but with everyone in the program. You will have the opportunity to participate in an ESA sponsored mentorship program called Entomology. You'll get to attend ESA meetings, present your research at ESA meetings, and volunteer. So those are our programmatic elements. And I'd like to take this opportunity to now turn the microphone over to Carolina. So maybe to hear, I guess, what her perspective is as a participant in FIFA.
Hello, yes, Stacy, thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm very happy to be here and to share my experience with the people that are willing or are looking to joining this program. And I'm going to start saying that I heard about this from my advisor at school. So if you have the chance to share with other people, do it so this reaches to as many people as possible. So I decided to apply and thankfully I got accepted. The first week we went up to Fort Collins and it was for the orientation week. There we got a little glimpse of what we're going to be doing the rest of the summer at the labs or the research approaches that we're going to take. We also there got to meet the rest of the interns, the fellows. Some of us, we became friends. We also met our mentors and some of the leaders of the division of the vector-borne diseases. That week, we also got to see what public health entomology is really about and what we can do as professionals to ensure that everybody has health equity. We also got to see what the role from every branch has and we got to learn what we were going to be doing at the different branches. As they said, for example, the interns that were going over to Puerto Rico, they were working with dengue. The ones that were in Fort Collins are viral. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I was doing. Over there, we were staying at the Colorado State University. So we didn't have to worry about housing or anything because ESA provided everything for us. And that week also, if we didn't know what was really entomology or arthropods about, we got a very good introduction on what that world is all about. After that week, then we arrived to our corresponding locations. I was personally assigned to the Atlanta campus. And there I got to work with Dr. Nicholson. He was our mentor at the Disease Ecology Laboratory, and we belong to the rickettsial zoonosis branch of the CDC. There we learned about the public health aspects, about tick-borne diseases, how to prevent those, how they're transmitted, and mostly we studied the ticks in depth as vectors because they're affecting a lot the communities nowadays. Caitlin and I, she was the other intern and now she's my friend. We got trained in laboratory safety, how to put on the PPE, how to keep everything clean and how to work on the safety cabinets. We also learned about fieldwork safety when collecting ticks. We went to some parks to collect and then we would bring them back to the lab to study them. We learned about serology assays to detect antibodies in blood serum. We did PCR assays, culture of cell lines, and how is that involved with rickettsial agents. And we also learned how to identify ticks and their taxonomy. I can say that now, if I see a tick, I can easily say, oh, that's, for example, Amphibolium maculatum and different others. We got to observe and practice a little bit of mosquito and kissing bugs colony management. And even if we were mostly working with ticks, we also got to see that, how they grow, where they grow, how to feed them, and also how to test insecticide resistance in mosquitoes. And I can say that besides the laboratory work, we also got instructed by Dr. Nicholson in many professional skills, as Stacy was mentioning. It's not only about the lab work or research work. They were also teaching us how to, for example, build a proper CV, how to apply for graduate school. And Dr. Nicholson even took us to the Georgia State University so we could talk to the graduate students and learn from their experiences as well, what they did to enter there and what are they doing right now. And at first, I kept wondering, how is the environment? How are the people? Are they going to be nice? And now I can say that they were very kind to me. And even if I was an international student, they didn't treat me any different. They were very patient. They taught me everything that they could. I have to say that Brian, Bessie, Chrissy, Dr. Nicholson, and the rest of the people that we met there, they showed me what really is to be a public health and research professional. We had the chance to work also on personal projects. Mine specifically was about detecting rickettsial agents in ticks and deer blood. That was very interesting. I learned a lot about DNA extraction, PCR, all those skills that later on are going to be very useful and I definitely need for my professional career. Every week, ESA also was holding meetings. They called them entomentals, and there we got to meet different professionals in entomology or research, and they would talk to us about their experience, and they would also ask our questions and doubts on how we can develop our careers. And during the time we were on the internship, I can say that I didn't have to worry too much about like daily stuff, like groceries or where I was gonna stay because ESA had that all covered. We were staying at the Emory campus, and it was very comfortable, very nice, and also the transportation. We were using the shuttles from Emory University, so for the people that go there, they don't have to worry about transportation. They also have routes that take you to the grocery store during the weeks and the weekends as well. And I want to say that in general, it was one of the best experiences I've had academically, professionally, and I also enjoyed it as a person. I got to meet great people, as I said. And now I have a clearer idea of what I need to do to continue pursuing my professional goals. And even I got more opportunities now to grow because I was there as an intern, but as Stacy said, there are fellowships opportunities that I can also apply for next year. And honestly, when I was done, I was thinking I don't want to leave because this has been very fun and I really enjoyed it. But now I have the chance to go again.
Thank you.
Exactly. So,
I'm sorry you cut off, but thank you for that. I'm glad you had a positive experience and thank you for the recommendation.
yes, for sure.
And Sue, do you want to talk a little about the differences in the different CDC branches?
I'm happy to. And thank you, Catalina, for sharing your experience with us. It was just a joy watching Catalina thrive and explore. This is a picture on the right-hand side. She's right in the middle there with Caitlin. And the two of them together joined a number of other fellows doing some tick drag work that was happening out in the field. And you heard a lot of really, really great detail on what Catalina experienced. And I will say that everything that Stacy ran through in terms of the core elements are going to be consistent across all of the internships and fellowships that we discussed today. Are the core content that we want to make sure we're exposing everyone to is similar. And you will 100% always get a mentor who is well published, who has expert entomology skills, who can connect you to other areas that you may be interested in and help you grow professionally. But there are some differences across the three locations that I wanted to spotlight just to help you understand some of the differences that we have across our very, very diverse division in terms of geography and cultural focus. So We have, as Ben mentioned earlier, 3 different locations. Our Rickettsial Zoonosis branch is located in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's where Carolina was stationed for her internship. And that is CDC headquarters. So you'll see CDC in all of its glory. The vast majority of the 10,000 staff that work for CDC are stationed there. It has proximity to Emory University. It's right next door to CDC headquarters. And there are some fieldwork opportunities. Dr. Nicholson really made it a point, as you heard from Carolina, to make sure that they did some field work, as you see to the right, but also went and visited University of Georgia to learn about the graduate programs there, just to help diversify the experience and give a lot of different strategies to expose folks to the field of public health entomology. And it's also tick-borne disease focused, because that's rickettsial diseases are predominantly tick-borne, although not exclusively. You heard some kissing bugs and some other work mentioned by Carolina as well. Now in Fort Collins, this is the division of vector-borne disease headquarters, and that's where Ben and I are located, as well as our program manager, Holly Hooks, who you would meet if you interview or are selected for this program. So we are all here in Fort Collins, Colorado, and we have proximity to the Colorado State University, and that's where we have internship housing arranged. And so it is another university town, which is great. There are some fieldwork opportunities, but for those, we are partnering with a lot of vector control organizations that have partnerships with CDC or personal and professional relationships with our mentors, which is really great. And we do both mosquito-borne and tick-borne disease activities here in Fort Collins. You'll see the extensive insectaries that our interns and fellows can work within. And finally, San Juan. So San Juan, Puerto Rico is a really, really wonderful branch of our division that focuses on dengue. It is in a dengue endemic US territory, and so there are many, many fieldwork opportunities. So in terms of the internships, we try to match people based on their interest levels, their enthusiasm and interest in specific areas, and we will be listening very carefully for whether or not you really love field work. This is hot, sweltering work. Oftentimes, you really have to roll up your sleeves and apply that insect repellent. But if you love field work, this is a really, really great location for you. The other two, of course, we're going to provide some field work opportunities, but you can't compare the amount of field work that we have for Atlanta and Fort Collins to San Juan, just because there's so much capacity to do field work in San Juan. And so those interns definitely are out doing a ton of that work. And we anticipate that will be true for the fellows as well. We haven't had fellows placed there until this year, so we anticipate a lot of field work for those fellows as well. And they are mosquito-borne disease focused, specifically the flaviviruses of dengue and Zika, although we haven't had Zika circulating. And then we also have chikungunya work that is happening there as well. But we recognize also that Spanish is the primary language spoken in Puerto Rico, San Juan. Many people speak English, but you probably will want to commit to learning at least some Spanish. It's not required, but it will make your life easier if you're at least open to it. But it's not necessary. You just have to be aware that you will be in a US territory where Spanish is the primary language. So I think that gives you just sort of a general sense of the 3 locations, and we wanted you to be aware of that as you apply. For the 2-year fellowship, you will be applying to a specific billet, as Stacy mentioned, that will be connected to one of these locations. And so that might be something that you want to consider when you're selecting your billet for application. And then I just wanted to introduce you more fully to our interns and 1-year fellows. Again, we didn't have the 2-year fellow program yet, but these are all of our 2022 to 23 FIFA ESA class participants. And we have grown to know and love each one of these individuals. They were really, really wonderful. Juan and Jacoby are still here with us in Fort Collins doing their 1-year fellowship. Many of these individuals will be applying to the 1-year and 2-year opportunities. And we're really excited that we were able to entice them from a whole host of different backgrounds, virology and agricultural science. As Stacy mentioned, we did not require any kind of entomological experience coming into this, just interest and openness to explore the field of public health entomology. And we were really, really enthusiastic and excited about the interest level and experience that we got from this amazing class of interns and fellows who we pulled really from across the nation, maybe a little more Southern in terms of the representation, which was totally fine, but definitely from across the US. And we are hoping for a similar pull from across the US in our next class. So with that, I think we are ready to take any questions that you might have for any of us. And I'll turn it back over to Stacy to manage any Q&A that may come in through. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. And I encourage anyone to write any questions in the question and answer section. One question that has been asked already is whether we will make these slides available. So I think what we'll do is make sure all the numbers are correct as far as the placement of the fellows. And then I will email a copy to the attendees. In addition, we will post the recording of this webinar shortly after it's published, or shortly after we conclude. One attendee asked if they can apply for more than one program. Now, I don't see why not. We haven't necessarily structured the application period, application portal. But if what you're asking is whether you can apply for a 1-year and a 2-year fellowship, I don't see why not. And you would just need to make sure that you answer the questions, which will be a little different for the 2-year fellowship. Sue, do you disagree with that?
Completely agree with you.
Another program is about compensation. Does the program cover the cost of getting to and from the internship or fellowship? As to the internship, yes. The interns will have pretty much all their expenses paid because it's a 10-week commitment. The fellows are in a little different situation. We expect that the fellows will pay for their own living expenses. They make more money and it's a 1 or 2-year commitment. The fellows have already graduated from college or a graduate school program. So the transportation costs that the fellows incur is their expense. What we will cover for fellows is transportation to an annual meeting if you decide to go to an annual meeting. If there is a work-related trip, for instance, one fellow in Fort Collins, I believe, went to New Orleans to do field work there. So that would be an expense that we would cover. Is the internship only for undergrads? Yes. So the internship is for individuals going into their senior year, for students who have completed undergrad, either a 1 or 2-year fellowship would be appropriate.
And Stacy, I can take the question from Carmen. Are there opportunities for internships through your program for vector biology for students who do not attend an MSI? And not for FIFA. However, we do have right now 2 open ORISE fellowships that are available more generally for students who are interested in public health entomology who would not qualify because they did not attend an MSI. So we do have other fellowship opportunities, just not FIFA.
And then one other question was, I'm sorry, whether an international student can apply. And a student can apply as long as that student can legally work within the United States and be able to legally work in the United States in a timely manner, knowing that we need to start in late May, early June. As to the start date, there was another question around the start date. So what we did this year was for the fellows, there was a little bit of flexibility around the start date, but we want everyone to attend orientation together. One of our students was getting his master's degree, so he came for orientation, went back to school for a few weeks to finish his thesis, and then started. But for a variety of reasons, we would like everyone to start close together, even though there may be a little flexibility for fellows. All right, so I am going to hold the questions open for a little bit longer. Are there any other attendees with questions? Okay, I think there's a question in the chat. Just one second. I believe I saw a message that, okay, I'm sorry, it's in the chat. I'm sorry, Giovanna, I saw Stephen's question and I answered that as far as coverage, compensation, and I answered Alfie's question regarding start date. I believe, just one second. So Alfie's question is, hello, I saw on the ESA website that the start date could be arranged. How early could one start after being accepted into the fellowship? I anticipate graduating this fall, and I'm interested in the fellowship. So if by fall you mean December 2022, I do not believe that acceptance letters would be sent before March 1. So acceptances are going to be issued sometime during March with a start date, give or take, around Memorial Day. And yes, you could start maybe a little later as a fellow, but not too much later, knowing that everyone would have to gather for orientation. So I think that is the response to Alfie's question. And yes, we are going to share the video. I'm going to email the slides once we're 100% sure that all the information is correct. And the recording will be on YouTube.
Yeah, and there's a question about Puerto Rico and the impact that the recent hurricane may have had on the programs there, and if it'll limit opportunities to travel in 2023. I can tell you I'm going there actually on Saturday to visit the dengue branch and do a good bit of work there with the branch. I will say, just setting expectations, that being in a Caribbean island climate, there are just some realities about being there and having some inconsistencies in terms of running water and electricity. And Catalina, having attended school there, can probably vouch for this. This is something that just kind of comes and goes. Our 100 staff or so at the dengue branch have learned to be ready, be prepared for those inconsistencies. And so during both orientation as well as the interview process, we can talk more about that, but making sure that you plan, just as we do here in CONUS, for any kind of inconsistencies that you might experience for, if there was an emergency, you'd want to make sure that you have some bottled water, make sure that you have batteries in the house in case you lose power. Our dengue branch does have 2 very, very large generators and a multi-day supply of diesel fuel at all times, because we cannot allow for a loss of power to threaten our very, very precious specimens. And we also need to continue operating as in uninterrupted fashion as possible. And so Ben can attest, we work really hard to make sure that the dengue branch stays open at all times with very, very minimal interruption when we have disasters like Hurricane Fiona that just came through. We were shut down for, Ben, I believe it was 2 days for Fiona. Definitely more for Maria, and we have done everything we can to support the staff so they can continue doing their extremely critical public health work there. So hopefully that answers your questions. No concerns about travel so far, but you would want to plan if you got placed there for some general interruptions in water and electricity just by being in a Caribbean island.
And you know, Sue, I think I would add to that that they're quite a resilient group there, and they look out for one another. They really have a great program and great team there. So despite a lot of those adversities they face from time to time.
Thank you, Ben and Sue. There was one question, an attendee asked if they graduated next spring or summer, will they be eligible? And I'm not sure what you meant by next. So if it is spring or summer 2022, and spring or summer 2023, and you graduate with a bachelor's, master's, or doctorate, you will be able to apply for a 1 or 2 year fellowship. If you have a doctorate, you can only actually apply for a 2-year fellowship. But if you have a bachelor's or a master's, I guess, let me be specific. If you have a bachelor's, you can apply for a 1-year fellowship. If you have a master's, you can apply for a 1 or 2 year fellowship. If you have a doctorate, you can apply for a 2-year fellowship. That's in the spring or summer of 23. If you're graduating by next, you meant spring or summer of 24, you can apply for an internship this summer or a fellowship when you graduate in 2024. So the answer is yes, you can apply. The question is what you are eligible to apply for. So I'd like to believe that FIFA has something for almost everyone. There's a comment, a suggestion in the chat from Raphael, and I appreciate your comment, Raphael. And I think I am going to close out the webinar now. We do not have any more questions in the chat. Again, this recording will be posted on ESA's website, and I will distribute a corrected PowerPoint. So thank you very much for this hour. I really hope you consider applying. I think that this is a wonderful opportunity. And thank you, Sue and Ben and Carolina.
Thank you, everyone. We hope you apply.